We are live.
Let's go since we're live. Y'all know what we're going to be talking about today? Pre-spawn fishing on points. I'm curious to hear what y'all's goals are for fishing is for this year. I know a lot of y'all are iced in. For some of us even here in the South, you're probably just starting to get active in your fishing. And you should at least have a goal of this year, I want to catch more fish. My tournaments, I want to do X in my tournaments, in my fishing club, in the BFLs, whatever it is you fish, your kayak events. And whatever it is, I guarantee you it has something to do with catching more fish, maybe bigger fish, learning a new technique. One thing that I've learned is each season, there's so many different techniques, so many different baits out here. What I like to do is take one season and really bear down, double down on one specific way to catch fish. And so tonight, what I want to talk about is catching fish on points. That's so simple that some of you are going to get bored with me talking about that. Let's just catch fish on points. Let's learn how to fish them. But when you start breaking down all the small nuances of fishing points, you'll find out that, like, gosh, dude, I could talk about this forever. I could learn about this forever. It's unlimited bait choices, unlimited ways that I can consume and get better at fishing points that will help me catch fish. So what we're going to talk about tonight is fishing points. I know I've done this already before. If you were in the Fall Fishing Academy, for y'all that are new to the app, if you're in the Fall Fishing Academy back earlier this year, one of the things that I talked about was fishing points. Well, guess what we're going to do tonight? We're going to talk about fishing points in the context of pre-spawn fishing. Pre-spawn fishing, which for us here, southeastern United States, is pretty much what you're dealing with. If you're probably from Virginia South, you're dealing with pre-spawn fishing. Pennsylvania South, draw a line across the country. It's pre-spawn fishing. So what I want to do in this discussion, number one, we're going to identify what pre-spawn fishing is anyway. So many times in fishing, we just throw out these terms and just assume that everybody knows what they are. And a lot of us do know what they are, but do we really, really understand the context of what pre-spawn fishing is? I know a lot of y'all in the context are already very accomplished fishermen and tournament fishermen, but don't think this is too elementary for you, because I had to think about this. I'm so used to just saying pre-spawn. But what does that really mean? When I say pre-spawn, what is that? What are we talking about? When does it really begin? How do I know that the fish are in the pre-spawn mode? We're going to talk about that. Secondly, we're going to talk about the different types of points. The different types of points. There's a bunch of different types of points. When you look at your laser points everywhere, especially if you live on Lake Hartwell where I am, there's points from the time you put in your boat. There's points on the ramp. There's points riding down the ramp. There's points in the marina. There's points under the bridges. There's points everywhere. How are you supposed to know? How you break them down? How do you know which one you need to be fishing now? That's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to show you pictures. I'm going to show you aerial images. I'm going to show you some clips of where I was fishing just this past week in the Tackle Warehouse Invitational at Lake Hartwell. I fished points. I fished points. And I didn't do anything I didn't do anything through a bait that you don't have. I didn't use any thought process that would be above your level of thinking and ability in the Tackle Warehouse tournament just this past weekend. Everybody that's in this app, that's on this live, if you can hold a fishing rod, you could do exactly what I just did this past weekend. There was nothing special about it. It was very, very simple, easy fishing. That's what I want to talk with you guys tonight about. Y'all ready to jump into it? As always, if you're new to the app, the whole point is just to be interactive. Post your comments in the chat. If it's something you think about, a lot of times what happens in these conversations, we have the conversation, and then tomorrow a question comes up to your mind. You're like, well, the chat's over. I can't ask him. It's over. Absolutely not. You can. All you got to do is post it in the community section the next day, and I'll get to it. Put it in the Ask BLAT, and I'll either make a podcast about it, or sometimes I'll answer it right there on the spot in the app. I'll just, if it's something that doesn't require a lot of layers, then I'll answer it right away. But if it's something that you really need to dig into, we may do a podcast, or I may turn it into an entire workshop for you. So let's just jump into it. First thing I want to talk about, Michael, if you want to, are you okay to start flipping up slides or good? There it is. Pre-spawn fishing on points. What is the pre-spawn? Okay. We want to talk about, you can jump to that second one, Michael. We want to talk about what is it? I really want to get a clear, I want us all to be on the same page of talking about what is the pre-spawn. How do we know that it's happening? I'm teeing it up on my iPad too. So what is the pre-spawn? This is the best definition that I could come up with to know that your body of water, the fish in your lake, river, pond, or whatever, is in the pre-spawn period. This is the best definition that I sat and thought about this for a couple hours this morning. It's like, what is the pre-spawn? We just say that, but what is it? How do we know that it's going on? This is the way I like to describe it. Anytime the water temperature stabilizes or starts to rise during the winter, when that water temperature stabilizes or starts to rise, your fish are in the pre-spawn period. You see, I put on there, the second bullet point says the spring photo period. All that means is longer days. When the days start to get longer, it's a good indication that your fish are in the pre-spawn. They're thinking about spawning when you get those two elements. I don't think it's one or the other, but I do think it's when you get those two elements, there's a formula to this. Those two elements working together. A third element that you possibly could put on this, but I'm not convinced that I've seen the evidence of it yet, is a full moon. I can't seem to put the correlation together, but these two undoubtedly, if I get the water temperature stable or rising, and I get longer days. How many of you know when you got home, I know we just spring forward with our time, daylight savings time, but how many of you know right before daylight savings time, it was starting to get dark all the way at almost 7 o'clock, where just a couple, if you go back to November, December, it was getting dark at like 5:15. Big difference. Of course, that depends on what time zone you're in, I think, too. At least I think it does. So this is when that's how I want to identify it. Anytime that water temperature is stable or rising, and I mean, when I say rising, just a degree or two. When it stabilizes and it just hovers around 42, 43 degrees, then your fish are starting to stage. They're starting to think and do and have behaviors around spawning. You get those longer days, the days are getting extremely long now. Okay, Mike, let's jump to the second one, our next slide. Okay. Now, obviously, this conversation is going to be about fishing points in the context of pre-spawn fishing. If you've joined the Fall Fishing Academy back later last year, one thing I talked about was fishing these steep points close to the river channel that dump off into the river channel. That was the context of the conversation. But now we're going to do the exact opposite when it comes to fishing points in the spring during the pre-spawn. We're going to actually be looking for flatter points. Now, does everybody know what a point is? When I say a point, I probably should have broken that part. Do we know what a point is? Point's going to be any kind of landmass, a narrow landmass. It could be a broad landmass that just sticks out into the water. When you look at a bridge, there's usually 4 points. There's 2 on each side. Those are points. That aerial that you're looking at right now, that's a point. You see that high spot in the middle? That's why I used a lot of aerials in this, because it's easy for us to see a point. And I'm going to show you more specifically in some more aerial images here in just a second. But the types of points we're going to be fishing, we're going to be flatter points. I like points in the spring during the pre-spawn that are in the creeks, especially if I'm fishing for largemouth. I prefer the ones that are in the creeks. I'm going to show you what that looks like if that's confusing. So hold on. You can get an image that you can draw in your head that'll help you for this too. And I still fish main lake points and main lake flats during the pre-spawn of the year, which is where we are now. Some of you, you're fastly approaching this time. So if you're iced in, just chill. Just chill. Bring everything's archived. Just have a woosah and come back to it in a month. This information, listen, good information and fishing is, if it's good now, it's good later. If it's good now, it's good next year. If it's good now, it'll be good from 10 years from now. And I'm telling you, this is good information. Main lake flats, main lake points, especially if your lake or river has smallmouth or spotted bass. This is where you need to be living. It's on the main lake flats, main lake points. But the biggest thing is you want to do is you want to find those areas that are flatter. Why would we do that? I want to ask a question and get the chat lit up. I'm going to get the chat lit up tonight. Right now I'm talking about fishing points and I keep saying flatter, flatter, flatter. If it's in the creek, flat. If it's on the main lake, flat. If it's spotted bass, still flat. If it's smallmouth, still flat. Does anybody know why that is? I want you to answer that in the chat. Why do I keep saying flatter points? In the fall time of the year, I kept talking about deep. I kept talking about those really sharp contours on the points. Why do you think in the spring the flat points are a better option for you to fish? I'd love to hear what you think about that. Give me some answers in here. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. 39, 10, 8, 7, 2, 1. Okay. Let's see if anybody has. That was my 30 seconds. I don't see anybody giving me answers. Okay. Has everything to do with water temperature. Has everything to do with water temperature. Even if I'm fishing docks, we've been talking about fishing docks here recently. And docks, yes, there it comes, segs. It has a lot to do with segs. Not a whole lot to do with bait fish, but it can. The spawning areas, yes, staging. It has everything to do with water temperature. I want you to think about something right quick. Okay? Days get longer. Temperature gets warmer. More sunshine. I want you to think about that. What is going to warm up fastest? If you wanted to get warm, if you're in the water, you wanted to get warm, which water do you think is going to get the warmest, the fastest? Is it going to be that water that has this huge water column, 15, 20 foot deep? Or if I had just 5, 6 foot, just depends on water clarity. For some lakes, it's going to be 10 foot as shallow. For some lakes, it's going to be 2 foot as shallow. Which one of those is going to warm up the quickest and I could absorb the most sunlight? Which one would it be? It would be the shallowest. The shallow waters are going to warm up fast. So let me get up on here in 2 foot in these flats and just start perusing around, looking for them brim like I saw Mac Toon talking about. Looking for them brim. Chomp got him, man. I'm going to get me some sun too. He's in his bathing suit. He's getting some vitamin D. It's warming up. He's on the beach. It's like the beach to him. Shallow water, flats. Did this literally, I can confirm this from fishing this week. On Monday, March, whatever the heck Monday's date was, it was freaking booty butt naked cold. I like to die on Lake Hartwell. 42 degrees and raining. Now, when I say that, with my northern people, they're 42 degrees, it's -7 up here. Well, listen, Larry, do you have 40-degree rain running down your back and your butt crack when you're driving down the lake? You get hypothermic really fast at 40 degrees once you get wet. Usually what people say, well, you need to get a better rain suit. Bro, there's no rain. Show me a rain suit that doesn't have a hole in it. Every rain suit that's ever existed has at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 holes in it. Every rain suit that's existed has 6 holes in it, and you're going to get wet when you're moving around. If I just stood there like this, I'd be warm and fine. But if you're riding down the lake, your hood's catching all the water and it's just shooting into your face. It's going up your sleeves. It's going down the back of your crack where you've been over. It's coming up your pant legs. You're going to get wet at some point if it's raining hard enough. I got a $1,200 Simms rain suit. It's a good rain suit. until you start moving around at 50 miles an hour. Then you get hypothermic. I'm not talking about points right at this point. I'm wasting your time talking about my rain suit. But listen, we went from 40 degrees and raining, and then all of a sudden, literally the next day, it was 70 degrees. Bop, sun everywhere, bluebird skies. Immediately, you start to see bass swimming around in the shallows. Immediately, you start to see bass suspending under docks, absorbing the sunlight. So this time of the year, that's why it's important for you on your body of water. I'd be fishing as shallow as I could. Somebody's going to take that to make it sound like I said the only way you can catch fish during the pre-spawn is shallow. All the fish are shallow. No. What I'm trying to get you to understand is that a lot of the bass, a large percentage of the bass, and a good way for you to catch more fish and reach your goals this year is to understand the relationship of bass wanting to be shallow during the pre-spawn. They're going to come in waves. Not all the bass are going to be shallow right now. There's still going to be a portion of them that are 40 foot deep that have no idea that it's 70 degrees above surface and everything's warming up. They haven't got the memo yet. They're in a different party. They're sort of like us down here in Belton, South Carolina. When something comes out new, when a new clothing trend, new music trend, a new car trend comes out, we're the last ones to find out about it down here in the sticks. I don't ever know what's new and what's coming out, or what the new dance is, or what the new music is, a new clothing trend. I'm still stuck on 1997. People have moved on. It's like that with the bass fishing. There's different groups. Do y'all remember on last Friday? I know only about 15 of y'all tuned in. Last Friday, I was talking about the different, or whenever I did it, the live that I did Wednesday, I was talking about the different groups of fish on every body of water. You have a main lake group of fish. You have a group of fish in the creeks, and a group that fish that swim back and forth and migrate. You remember I talked about that? Since you have these different little microcosms of fish, the fish will move to these flatter points, these creek points, these main lake flats at different times because they live in different places and they experience the lake and the weather in a different way at different times. So all of them aren't going to be on the flats just yet. You'll still be able to catch some a little bit deeper. But I bet I have a good indication. I feel really good and real confident about telling you right now is probably your best time to get some reps in fishing shallow. I don't care where you are. Doesn't matter where you are. And when I say right now, I don't mean right now as in this date. What I mean is right now as in this time period of pre-spawn fishing where you live. So for like Brian Barty or Kevin Skavinsky, this time frame may be more like late April, May. For us in South Carolina, it's March and April, sometimes even February. For people in Florida, you're just lost in this whole conversation because you're like, what seasons? For people out west, it's the same thing. You're probably experiencing about the same time frame in pre-spawn weather. But I'm talking about pre-spawn and not necessarily date when I say right now. That's the context. All right, Michael, let's jump to this next slide. What does it say? Okay. So now I want to start showing you some aerials. And I'm also going to mix this in with some fish catches on these exact aerials that I'm showing you. I took these literally from, one of these catches is literally from yesterday morning that I'm about to show you that I fished. Not this specific one, but literally yesterday morning, 8:30 a.m. I'm about to show you. This is fresh off the press that I'm about to show you. Okay, do you remember on this last slide I just said you want to fish flatter points? Sometimes in the creek is your best bet. And then you could also fish flats and points on the main lake. Now, let's look at a flat point in a creek. I want to give you a visual of what that looks like. Do you see the big red circle? If you don't see the big red circle, I want you to go to your phone, find the closest eye doctor to you, and sign up for an appointment right away. If you don't see the red circle. If you see the red circle, give me an amen. That's what a flat point looks like. That's what a flat point looks like. And that is a creek point. That's what I'm going to refer to as a creek point. A lot of times when we say points, we think of something towards the main lake or something long and exaggerated. Now that point right now is covered in water. Nevertheless, it's still there. It has about 5 foot of water on it. I fished that one in the tournament too. Caught something on it in practice. I did not get to go get on this one in the tournament. I did go in here, but I didn't get to go to that specific spot. Now, I want you to look at that, and I want you to think about why that point would be a good place to fish during pre-spawn. Is there anything that you see on the left and right side that would make sense for that spot, the circled in red, to be really good for pre-spawn fishing? I see something on the left and I see something on the right. Y'all see those two big bays on the left and the right? Those big bays are going to be the spawning bays. And they will spawn on the point too. But those bays to the left and the right of that red circle, they'll stage on that point, and then they'll go back to those two bays on the left and the right side and do the nasty. Sort of like when you're in high school, you kind of stage. Well, hopefully you weren't in high school. Hopefully this is where you're dating in your 20s. You stage by you take her to the movies. And you try to take her home. Well, the home is to the left and the right of that point that you see right there. And that point is kind of like the movie. It's just kind of like, I'm just going to serenade you. Just want to be around with you. So it's like spending time with you. Just like being around with you. So they just kind of meet up on this point, and you get a little sachet of 10, 15, 20, 30, a little group of fish. They all get to meet, and then they leave and they go to the backs. Sometimes that's not to say these 2 points that you see further out towards the mouth are not game to catch fish. Yeah, you absolutely could. Those, you see the ones out towards the mouth of that pocket or creek, yeah, you could catch fish around those. I think the higher percentage is that flat one. You see how that one's much more broad and flat? They can get shallower, and it's bigger and shallower, more ambient heating, more ambient lighting, and they'll ultimately, that water is going to warm faster. That pocket's protected. It's a marina, so it's protected. So it's just a good place for those fish to get everything they need. There'll be food, shallow water, warmth, and protection with the marina docks. And they have spawning bays. And this is right off the main lake. So once they finish doing the deal, they can leave, go out to the main lake where the biggest source of food is, and live for the rest of the year. This creek would not be a creek that I would consider would be sustainable for fish that are, what am I trying to say? For fish to be residents in here. This creek is not big enough for that. It's just a small creek. I mean, you can see the front from the back and the back from the front. So it's not a creek that fish can be born in, live in, and stay all the year. They will have to transition out of that area to be able to live the rest of the year, which is not a bad thing. But they were loaded in there for sure. Okay, that gives you an idea what the creek point looks like. I did see some questions in there. MacToon, I saw you questions. I saw some other ones. Let me get past these next 2 talking points, and then I'll address those about the bottom composition, etc. Yes, that does play a factor, and it plays more of a factor in certain places than it does others. Okay. All right, Michael. Let's jump to this next slide. I am gonna get to you. This is what a point looks like on your graph. I just wanted to put that on there because I know when you're in your boat, you're not looking at aerial images. You're looking at something like this. I want to see if anybody notices anything about this specific point. Anybody notice anything about it? This is the point that I put in the Fall Fishing Academy that we had back this fall. It's the same exact point. You see those red lines in that dot? You remember when we were talking about fishing 30, 40, 50 foot deep? This is the same point. You can fish that same point up shallow now. Does that make sense? You see how fish transition? During the fall time of the year, you see how I stepped out and I fished that sharp contour where that blue dot is. If I were to go to that same spot right now, 100% guarantee there would be fish there. I would focus on where I have that red circle. Fish don't ever go that far from where they're born, where they live. They want to be around somewhere where they have everything that they need. I would ease up there in that 8, 9, 7 foot range and fish that area up there where I can actually see the bottom. So think about some of the places you've already caught fish on your body of water. Back this fall, back this winter. Think about those places. And I want you to think about the places around that area that are flat, shallow, closest to where you've been catching fish. If you were fishing deep, some bodies of water you didn't fish deep in the winter. Just this past winter, that was the context of our conversation. There's some lakes. I know Tim Dawson fishes Falls Lake and some of those lakes. Those fish don't go deep. There's no need in you fishing deep there. Lake Greenwood, it's probably changed a little bit at Greenwood, but it stays stained a lot. It's a dirty, fixed position, shallow, flat lake. You can get out in 15, 20, 25 foot of water, 30 foot sometimes, but primarily most of the fish live shallow there. So some of you guys, you weren't fishing deep at all. But what I would do is just start to transition to where I can get the shallowest that I can get, closest to the main lake. And so this is a place where I was fishing past this winter right now. I would just ease up on top of that point and start looking around for stumps, dark spots, light spots, the bottom composition, like they were asking about earlier. I would start looking for inconsistencies in bottom composition a little shallower is all I would do. And you'll find fish. It's really that easy. It is really that easy. I promise you. Okay, Mike, let's go to our next one. I just wanted to show you that. Okay, now, what I wanted to show you in this slide is the difference between I wanted to show you the orientation of that pocket that we first looked at with the point that was coming in the center. And I wanted to show you a couple different points that you could target. So you can see I just zoomed out so you can see how close the main lake is to that point. And then secondly, I showed you the main lake point. You see the red arrow is just pointing to the main lake point. That may be somewhere that a lot of times, we come up with these theories on paper and the fish aren't reading the paper. Okay. So I'll say flat points inside of the creek. You go into that creek where that point that I circled in 2 slides ago and you don't catch any fish. Well, what do you do now? Well, Brian, I done paid you $25 a month. You told me to fish the flat point inside the creek. I went and fished 1 point and I didn't catch any fish. You're false information. That's how that works. Listen, just step out a little bit. Step out a little bit. Just see if maybe where that red arrow is, that point right there, maybe try there. Maybe try some of these other points that are down there. Just try some other places in the vicinity of that. We know the bass are going to go in there and spawn. So we just have to find. We've already got in the vicinity, the area. Now you've got to be a detective. Now you got to be an investigator and figure out which point they're using at that specific time. Okay, let's jump to our next one, Mike. I think I'm about to. Now I'm showing you. My pop's calling me. Now I'm showing you a flat point. And this point that I'm pointing to, that red arrow, is the point that made my Lake Hartwell tournament. When you look at that, there is nothing exciting about that. I promise you, probably if you looked at that on the map, you probably would look right past that and look for something way more dramatic. Guaranteed. At that point right there, I caught 14.5 pounds on Saturday morning in about 35 minutes, right there where that red arrow is pointing. You see how that's flat? That is the main lake. That flat is on the main lake. I did catch all spotted bass off this spot. Keep in mind, I want to do this. If you're trying to target spotted bass, stay on the main lake. If you're trying to target largemouth, look for the points that are in the creeks. If you have if you have both species. If you've got smallmouth in your body of water, the smallmouth love to live on the main drag, the main body of water. Look for these flat points on the main drag, the main lake of your body of water. Okay, so you see that little flat point? That's all it was. And you can actually see on that point, I'm going to say this, and I'm literally just trying to draw a description of what we have here. You see how you got like the big point is like a nipple, and then you got two little nipples off to the side. That's a horrible choice of words, but I don't know how else. Two nipple. What else? Knobs. That's even worse. It's two. You see one, I got a red point, and then there's one just below that. There's 2 points on there. There's two little nipples. There's just nipples. Two nipples on that one point. That's just recognizing stuff like that is the key a lot of times. Because a lot of times people that, if you're on the water, the one that I'm pointing to with the red arrow is very obvious. The one around on the bottom side is not as obvious, but sometimes they get on that one. And being able to recognize and have an eye for that is going to catch you more fish. The beginning of the conversation, what I talked about is you want to know how to catch more fish this spring, and noticing little things like that is going to be the key to it. All right. So he said, we grown. I don't know. I'm not that grown. Sometimes I can't be. Hey, I can go either way. There are times where I'm like, Brian, you are too old to act like a 13-year-old. And then there's sometimes where I'm so deep, it's like, Brian, you are too young to act so old. I don't know why. Anyway. Okay, Michael, we can go to this catch here. This is a fish catch on that point. This is literally the point that I just showed you. I show up. This is actually yesterday. Literally fresh off the pace from yesterday. Okay. Hit the cut yesterday. So I pull up to the point. First place I went, I already know the fish are there. I'll get there, they're already busting.
I told you it's a herring spawn here.
On herring. And so a herring was spawning on this point. And I was throwing a jerkbait. Double hook jerkbait. Double hook. Plus one jerkbait. Triple hook. It's 13 fish in the one you get a shot be like 13 fish in it. Like I said, there's nothing that you can't buy. I'll just let y'all watch this for a second.
That's a good one.
That's a 3.8, I think it was. It was a big one.
That's a freaking good one.
That's how I started off my day yesterday.
We're going for it today, buddy. We're going for him today, son. That's a freaking 3.7 right off the bat.
Before I even weigh him, I'm already talking about he hit 3.7. Okay, so let's talk about that for a little bit. By the way, I am going to give y'all some baits, rods and reels. I know y'all looking for something to buy. I don't care about the important stuff. Y'all want to, where can I buy? Where can I go? What can I go get? What can I tie on? Give me something to spend money on. All right. Let's see. Let's hold off on that one just now, Michael. Let's hold off on that. Just hold. You can just stick a pin in. You can leave it there. So, what did I want to talk about on that point? There's a couple different options that I would have had to fish on that one. Obviously, I was fishing a jerk bait because the fish were active. When I pulled up there, they're schooling. I literally pull up, come off plane, blowing herring, blowing them out. They're having a UFC fight on them. I'm like, oh my God, could not wait to get my jerk bait over in there. As soon as I get over there, they lock it up. Okay, what are your bait choices when you pull up to a place like that? And I'm kind of jumping ahead. I'm going to tell you what my choices were on this particular spot, and then we're going to revisit this again at the end of the discussion, okay? My bait choices were a jerkbait and a Carolina rig, and this is why. It's just been my experience that during the spring, especially on spotted bass, like it's no better bait than the jerkbait. You can cover water with it really fast. Another bait that just hit me in the brain that I should have had tied on was a lipless. Spotted bass can't stand a lipless. So smallmouth, the same thing. Lipless would have been really good. Lipless is good for largemouth too. A lot of the bait's going to have to do with the water clarity. That's how I break them down. If I'm fishing flat points in stained water, I'm using this group of baits. If I'm fishing points in clear water, I'm using this group of baits. You're going to see I broke it down that way. But I use a jerkbait and I use a Carolina rig. It was that simple. I didn't use anything else. Once they kind of fizzled out, I tied on a Carolina rig, SMH worms, hot snakes, half-ounce sinker. I put 2 Carolina Creek keepers and 2 bobber stops to keep the weight from sliding down. For whatever reason, when I use one bobber stop, that sucker still moves around. I guess you could glue it in place, but I don't like putting glue on my fishing line. Y'all do whatever you want to. That's how what I did. It's that simple. I don't have nothing. I wish I could make it sound complicated. What I did, it would make me look like the most brilliant fisherman ever. What I was doing was so elementary. It was a Carolina rig. And I'll do a breakdown on that. I understand some people may not know what a Carolina rig is. It is fairly old school. So if you didn't get in fishing, but in the last 4 or 5 years, you may not know what a Carolina rig is. Just give me a little minute on that, and we'll do a full breakdown on what that is and how you can tie one up and where you should throw it, which is points right now is a good idea. Well, I'll work on that in the next few days. But just know this Carolina rig, and I can go get one. Carolina rig is a rig that has tungsten at the top, or not tungsten, but a sinker, 18 inches to 3 feet of fishing line, and a hook and a bait. We used to do it with a swivel. Now we've moved to this thing, this little silicone that holds the weight. And the idea, when I was young, we always said that the weight being separated for the bait makes the bait float up off the bottom. It doesn't. It actually drags the bottom too. The thing about the weight being separated from the bait is it allows the bait to stay on the bottom better. You wouldn't believe how sensitive fish are to your bait being on the bottom. It makes sense because I think they can pin the bait. I think he doesn't have any hands to pick it up. He's got to pin it with his mouth. And he can pin it against the bottom of the lake much better than he can probably just vacuuming in the middle of the water column. But bottom contact is a big deal. And the Carolina rig allows you to maintain bottom contact better. I think that's the secret to the Carolina rig. The jerk bait is just because it's a jerk bait and it's very erratic and bad. It drives them crazy. It's just like a woman in yoga pants. It drives them crazy. They cannot stand that jerk bait. I have the worst analogies ever. All right, so okay.
Yeah. What kind of show is this?
I don't know. It's getting bad. It gets worse by the moment. I really gotta stop this. I gotta come up with better analogies than what I've been coming up with because this is not good. I'm losing them by the minute now. I better keep going before I fall. Let me ask you questions before I go on this flat point one. I saw some good stuff. And I had to keep going because my brain, if I stop, then my brain will be doing brain things. Let's see here. I saw something about all right, so this one is from Tim. I would think points with various cover would be better. Context is everything. What are we talking about cover? Where are you going to find cover on Lake Hartwell in 2 foot of water? There ain't none. Why do we need cover? Don't necessarily need it. The object, the reason these bass are using these points and these shallow points right now is for sun, water, the warmth. Every lake is not going to have this. Now, some of your lakes may have a hydrilla or some type of cypress trees or something like that. But what are you going to do if you don't? I bet most of y'all's lakes don't have any cover on these points and flats. You don't have to have cover to catch fish. We don't have cover on Lake Hartwell. The only thing these fish have to hide is timber and 35 foot and deeper. They have docks and a few stumps and rocks. There's probably 87 laydowns on the whole 56,000 acres. There ain't a whole lot there. So cover is not a prerequisite to make that point fishable or worth it. How are you going to drag a Carolina rig if it's got cover on it? How you gonna throw a jerkbait if it's got a bunch of cover on it? We don't need it. We definitely don't need it. And quite frankly, there ain't nowhere you're gonna get it in the context of Lake Hartwell. Now, if I was at Santee, I would have a lot of stuff to throw at. At Santee, I would still be looking for points, and a lot of those points don't have cover on it. It's just a slick, hard bottom. It's just slick, hard, red clay bottom. This is why this is the reason. This is why I tell people all the time. That question right there, it triggers me to think about so many other things. That question right there, and that conversation more so is the exact reason I tell people to spend as much time as you can sight fishing, because it tells you so much about fish behavior. And I want you to start noticing how you find bass sitting on nothing most of the time. Red clay, mucky bottom. Because what is it? Everybody says, oh, don't fish a mucky bottom. You know how many 5 to 7 pounders I've seen sitting on the nastiest green algae, nasty muck bottom? But everything's in context. What type of lake is it? What on Hartwell, they're always going to be on a mucky bottom because the whole lake is nothing but mucky bottom. It's all mucky bottom. But if I went to Florida, I would definitely not want to be fishing the mucky bottom. They like sand. When I go up north, they don't like mucky bottom. They like that grass. It's got holes in it, and it's kind of like it's a clump of grass, and it's clear, and it's sand. It's a clump of grass, and it's clear, and it's sand. Or it's a clump of grass, and it's rocks. They like that stuff there. So everything's about context. It's not black and white. It's not black and white when it comes to that conversation. Let's see. Michael, did you catch any good questions that popped up?
I saw one good one fairly early on, asking about what would you do as a co-angler fishing that point.
Get my jerkbait out and get to whop whackety whack. If you're a co-angler and you're fishing a point, I mean, you got plenty of room to fish. I do exactly everything that I'm telling you right now. Everything I'm telling you right now should be fair game for a co-angler. You're not box skin. If you're fishing docks or something, you're kind of, you got to pick your poison then. But in this context, do exactly what I'm telling you to do. Throw exactly what I'm telling you to throw right now. There's nothing. You don't have a different strategy. It's all hands on deck on this one. I would do the same thing that I'm talking about.
We got the question from James just popped in about side scan, scoping the point for activity before you stop, or you just going for
too shallow. In this context, it's not. Listen to me. Bait is not a factor. Structure is not a factor. You're talking about flats that are 2-4 foot deep. That side scan is not going to give you much. That's why we use baits that you can cover water with. The jerk bait, the lipless, even the Carolina rig. You can cover a lot of water with that really fast. It's known as an old school beer belly, New Balance wearing, club fishing style of fishing. That doggone Carolina, you can drag it out there. You can throw it out there a mile, first of all, in the wind. Drag it back pretty free. Fish it faster than any other soft plastic rig that's out there, because it stays on the bottom. When I pull that shaky head, it comes up. I don't know when it's back on the bottom. I have as good as feel, but that's the thing with the Carolina rig. You throw it out and it's just bottom, mushy. That's a bite. You got good feel with it, so you can fish it really fast. You don't need I didn't turn my electronics on the front, y'all. I didn't even use it. I just use my maps to know where the points are. I'm not scanning. I'm scanning with these two little beady black eyeballs that I got in my mind. That's all I'm saying. I can see where it drops off, and I want to cast my bait, not in that red looking stuff, which is the shallowest water, but right where there goes from red, the bottom of the lake, to where I can't see the bottom anymore. It just looks like green water. I just cast right in that little blend spot. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Where you can just about can't see the bottom, just about can't make out the bottom. I'm casting right to that scene and dragging my Carolina rig back out from 4 to 6 to 8 foot of water. I'm not scanning. It has nothing to do with electronics. You don't need to be wasting time riding around looking for that. You look for flat points, and in the springtime of the year during the pre-spawn, if the fish are there, they're going to bite. They don't need your scan. They don't need your vote. They don't need your registration card. They don't need nothing. They want to bite. They want to eat your stuff. You know why? You know why? When a bass spawns, they don't eat. During the pre-spawn, that's why they eat so much. They eat so much because they know their focus now is turned to protecting their spawn, their eggs, the fry. So they're going to be the focus is eating now so they can do what they want to do later. That's a sermon right there. That sounds like something you hear in church. They know what's coming. They know what's coming, so they're eating now. Because for 2 weeks, they're going to sit there on the bed and they literally just focus on nothing gets to my fry. No brim, no crappie, no other bass, no nothing. Nothing gets in this bed without going through me first. They don't even eat. So he's got to put on the fat now. So don't waste your time. Don't waste you're not going to get any. All you're going to do is spook all the fish off trying to idle over it. That's all you're going to do. There's nothing to look at there. Forward facing, yes, you could scan up there and look for on your forward facing. You could look for beds. You could look for stumps. You could look for and if you could look for stumps or you could look for clumps of grass, then of course, yeah, you could cast to those specific holes in the grass. You could cast specific stumps and not waste as much time. You could see fish moving around on the points. You could see bait moving around on the points. You could do that. But as far as wasting your time scanning, you're just going to spook all your fish off. And we're talking about shallow points, so you're going to muddy the water up by idling as well. So I think it would be highly unproductive for you to idle or try to scan or try to use side imaging to find anything on these points.
Mac Toon asks, how does the water clarity dictate the flats, if any? You're talking about
We're going to get to that. Yeah, let's hold that one to the end, Mac. When I get to the baits. So let's I'll give you a little bit here. It's going to make sense when we talk about the baits. Water clarity, it's just depth. Long story short, it's just depth. If I'm talking about stain water, a flat might be 2 foot, 3 foot. But when I'm in clear water, like Lake Hartwell Clearwater, where you got 6-8 foot visibility, basically that's a great point. The water visibility is a good indication of how deep the flat needs to be that you're fishing. That's a good just guideline. That's not the gospel truth, but that's just a good guideline for you. I got 2 foot visibility. Look for the points in 2 foot, 4 foot, just within a foot or two of that visibility. Lake Hartwell, you got about 8 foot visibility, probably 8 to 12 foot flats, 6, 8, 12 foot. So basically just water just over your head is a good place to start looking. I'll say that again. A good place for you to start looking. A good place for you for your flats or points is the visibility. 2 foot visibility, probably 2, 3, 4 foot. If you got 8 foot visibility, I would say anywhere from 8, 9, 10, 11 foot. Just a couple feet within that visibility factor is going to be where you want to be when you're looking for points and flats during the pre-spawn. Make sense? And we're going to get into that at the end because the baits is going to have a lot to do with the water clarity that you use. Great question, Mac. Good one. Good question about the scanning as well. That's a really, really good question. FFE, forward facing eyes. Yeah, I like the FFE. That's all you need. You could use the forward facing sonar too. Some of these places I pulled up and caught 1. Some of them I pulled up and I caught, 10, 12. The biggest bass that I weighed last week on all those points came from that 1 bite. caught a 4.8 and a 4.12 off back-to-back consecutive points. That was the only bass I caught on both of those points all week. Would I've seen anything up there that I would have scanned with forward facing or side? Absolutely nothing. I don't see that fish. There's nothing on him. There's nothing he's hanging on. There's no grass. There's nothing. There's nothing for you to see. Nothing for you to see in those places. I'm gonna look for a few more questions and I'm gonna move on. I think we're good.
Not to get you off topic, but while you're talking about it, were other guys catching them with forward facing fishing
100%.
more offshore now? Okay.
There's no universe that exists for the foreseeable future where forward facing sonar won't play in any situation. There's no, it will always play for the foreseeable future. I don't see there's no tournament where it won't play unless it's illegal. It will always play. Keep in mind, we're talking about one dimension of catching fish during the pre-spawn, which is points. You can catch pre-spawn fish now in ditches. You can catch fish pre-spawn on docks. You can catch pre-spawn fish suspended out in the middle of the lake. What happens is, especially for most of you, you're going to try to consume all of that. And then you get to the lake. You only have one day to fish, most of you, 1 or 2 days a week. That's 8 days a month. You are not going to master all of that. You have to take one thing at a time for several years, perhaps. Several years, perhaps. For maybe, listen, I know that sounds exaggerated to you. Think about it. If you only fish on the weekends, let's just say you fish Friday, maybe Friday and Saturday. You get off work, you get off work, maybe you have a job where you get off Friday and you fish Saturday. You get 2 days a week. Dude, that's only 8 days a month. And in a month, spring is gone. They're starting to move on to something else. So with all your fishing in all seasons, the best strategy for you, I know for a fact, is for you to take this thing one little bite-sized crumb at a time. Because when you take that crumb, you're going to find all these other ingredients and steps and processes that you didn't even think about. And there's so many layers just to fishing a point. There's so many layers just to fishing docks. There's so many layers to just fishing grass. And so, absolutely, you can use the forward facing to fish ditches. You can catch fish in 30-foot still. The guys are still catching them deep. Guys are still catching them shallow. Guys are still catching them in between, which I was fishing, the in between part. So there's no, to answer the question, there's no universe that exists with forward facing sonar won't be a factor in this. Okay, I saw something I wanted to answer. Now, clarity determines how deep, not necessarily how shallow, Tim. Tim is asking, so clarity determines shallow. No, clarity determines how deep is going to be your zone. If your lake is staying, it makes no sense to be fishing out in 10, 12 foot of water right now, 15 foot. It just doesn't make any sense at all. But if your lake is clear, it does. Your clarity has everything to do with that. How long do you fish a point before you move? This is the whole seminar we're going to do at the fishing retreat. All right, well, there's a lot of elements to that question. That question is not as simple as what you just phrased it as. How long do you fish a point? Well, first of all, do you have anywhere to go? Second of all, if you're thinking about fishing somewhere else, that must mean you're not catching anything else. So if you're not catching anything where you are, why do you need to stay there? So I have to ask you questions to answer your question about how long to stay there, because I remember Randy said it was 20, he has a 20-minute rule or whatever. If you're on a point The fact that you're questioning if you should stay or go tells me that you're not catching anything. So if you're not catching anything, your next step, your next process should be where are you going next? Where are you going next? And if you have somewhere else to go, you should go with freedom. Just go. And if you go somewhere else and then you think, well, where you just left from was better, then you go back to that spot. In fishing, you're allowed to make wrong decision after wrong decision and wrong decision after wrong decision. You just need to make one right decision. Especially in the art of competition, you make wrong decision, wrong decision, wrong decision. But you can't get caught up into that and let it beat you up. It's just a wrong decision. It doesn't have to mean anything. It just means that decision that you made in that moment was not the right decision. It doesn't mean you're a bad angler. It doesn't mean you're dumb. It doesn't mean you don't know what you're doing. It's just that decision was not the right one. You move on and see if the next decision is the right decision. And then you move on and see if the next decision is the right decision. When I say decision, replace that word with spot. Replace that word with point. I fished this point. It was the wrong point. I moved to the next point. I fished this point. It was the wrong point. So I moved to the next point. I fished this point. It was the wrong point. I moved to another point. If you don't believe me, ask Tom Spooljarek. Tom Spooljarek fished with me here on Lake Russell. And I bet in 2 days, Tom and I fished 243,876,211 team points in 2 days. I fished a lot of wrong points, but when we fished the right point, we caught bass. And the key is not putting meaning, not putting too much meaning, not putting too much beat up, not getting depressed about making the wrong decision, fishing the wrong point 9 times in a row. Because on the 10th time, you fish the right point. So to answer your question, how long do you fish a point? If you're already thinking about how long, then you need to move. But before you move, where are you going? What do you have? Where are you going? If you haven't already thought, like when I'm at a spot, when I pull my trolling motor up to move to another spot, I already know where I'm going. I've already made a decision. I've already lost the confidence in this place that I'm at. I've already made a decision about where I'm going next, and now all I'm doing is executing on it. When I pull that trolling motor up, I'll tell my camera guy 5 casts before I say I'm gonna make 3 more casts, and then we're gonna move. Pull it up. Whoop, whoop. We're going to the next spot. And so I don't even think about it. Like I don't dwell on it a long time. I don't think about it a bunch. I just let it go. Just move. Because then if I move somewhere else and then I realize that this spot that I just left was better, then I turn the boat back around and I go back to that spot again. So you learn to be a little bit fluid in your fishing. Move. If you're thinking about, I don't know how long to fish a spot, then it's time to move. You've already lost confidence in that spot. You've already lost it. You're already not fishing it in full confidence. So leave. Get out of there. Go. But before you leave, you need to figure out where you're going, what you're looking for, what you're doing, what are you trying to accomplish? What is the objective, the goal? What is the plan for today? Where are you going to go next? Is it just to another point, or is it from now I'm done with points, I'm going to ditches? Is it now I'm done with ditches, I'm going to docks? You need to know that before you pull the trolling motor up and go, before you pull the kayak, paddle out with a kayak, whatever you do. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Because I'm gonna give you a whole hour of God's glory on that one at the retreat here in a few weeks, in 10 days, I think. Is that right, Destiny? If you're on here, but go. You have to go. Get up and go. My dad always say this: stick and move, stick and move. That's what he always tell me before a tournament. He always tell me, stick and move. You fishing points on sunny side of the lake in the AM? No, I don't care about that, James. James Holbrooks is asking, do I fish the sunny side? No, I care about the good side. If the herring's over here, that's where I'm going to fish. If the heron's over here on the dark side, I'm gonna fish the dark side. The heron's over here. Where's the good point? That's all I care about. The sun's not a factor in that for me at all. Especially on our lakes. I know that's gonna be different depending on what type of lake. There's really not a sunny side or a shade side anyway on these flatter points. It's all the same. Now I will say this: on certain lakes, east or west side may warm faster. On our lakes, the South Carolina or North Carolina, South Carolina or Georgia side of the lake may potentially be warmer than the other side. So that does become a factor if it's a factor. But the only way to find out if it's a factor is to get in your boat and go fish the Georgia side for a few hours and to fish the South Carolina side for a few hours. My dad used to tell me, oh, they come up on the Georgia side before they come up on South Carolina side or vice versa. What I found out in over 20 years fishing is they come up on the side they come up on when they come up on that side. There's been years where the South Carolina side pops first. There's been years when the Georgia side pops first. That's been my experience. I'd love to hear what y'all's experience has been.
Sounds like a t-shirt.
Which part of it?
Whichever side is the side that is the side.
Yeah. That's the side that they come up on the side they come up on when they come up on that side.
That's fishing truth right there.
Yeah, I've tried to make it math, and I've looked at that constantly year after year in the last 20 plus years, and there is no math to this. There's no math. Okay. Do you change your game plan on points when fishing tidal fisheries? I'm going to say no to that one, Barty. Do I change my game plan on points when fishing tidal fisheries? I've never fished a tidal fishery during the pre-spawn. So, in that context of the conversation we're having now, I really probably don't have a good answer. But no, I still don't think it would change. Once you start and really start paying attention to this, it actually gets more simple the deeper you get into it. Summer and fall, I fish these steep points, and then most of the time the bass are on the flat ones in the spring. I don't care if it's tidal. I don't care if it's staying, clear, spotted, smallmouth, largemouth, north, south, west, east. It's been about the same thing. Springtime flat, summertime sharp contours for the most part. Northeastern part of the country is a little bit different because I have caught them on some of those big flats up there in the summertime in like June, July. But the more I get into fishing, I realize there's more layers and fewer categories. I realize really all you got is this and this. But in this, there's all these tons of categories and layers over here in this. And there's actually tons of categories over here in this. But at the end of the day, there's only this and there's only this. It seems like it gets more simple the more I get into it because I realize none of that stuff even matters anymore. I think the more I fish, the more I'm learning how a lot of stuff that we think about doesn't matter as much as we thought it matters. Okay, let's jump to this. Let's get these last couple pieces in here, Michael. What I got? Is it a fish catch next? Okay, so flat main lake point. That's what you're looking at right there. Flat main lake point. I think I got a fish catch after this one. Is that what I'm about to show you? Let's see. I got it on my iPad right here. Yeah. Okay, this flat main lake point that I'm showing you right here. I think it was a 4-pounder off this one on a Carolina rig. There's a place I caught a fish on a Carolina rig. Now, why did I drag a Carolina rig on this one and not do something else? Well, the fact of the matter is I did throw the jerkbait across this point. I didn't get any bites. And when you look at this video, you're going to notice how calm the water is. I think that had a lot to do why I didn't get any bites on the jerkbait. I picked up my Carolina rig and within 3 to 4 casts, watch what happens. You want to cue him up, Mike? Just a simple Carolina rig, nothing special. Texas rig, Carolina rig with the Texas SMH worms. Throw it out there in about 8 foot of water. You see how still it is?
Dude,
Wow.
dude, that must be a good one. It is a big one. That is.
And that aerial image that I just showed you, that is that point
Oh my God.
that I'm showing you right there.
Look at
This is
that.
literally from Lake Hartwell.
Look at that thing. Yeah. That's a big one. Holy smokes. That changes the game. It's a 4
Big old
pounder.
largemouth. Main Lake flat
Holy
point.
smokes, bro. Largemouth. I just threw that jerk bait across there, didn't get nothing. Did you see that rod bow over when I hit that thing? God dang.
Pre-spawn fish. Look at his belly.
That's a 4 pounder, 315. Lock.
All right. So that was a largemouth on the main lake. Now, you're probably thinking, well, Brian, I thought you said creek points for these largemouth. Why flat main lake point? Why did you catch a largemouth? Well, Michael, can you go back to that aerial image, the one right before that, one more time? Okay. I want you to look to the left and right of that point. What do you see? You see Motel 6. We leave the light on. Is that what they said, Motel 6? I don't know. But they're going to spawn in those 2 pockets right there. So they're using that flat point to get some sun and feel good about themselves before they go in the spawn. If I could have got to that spot a little bit earlier, I just spent so much time on the first one where you saw me catch that 3.7, 3.8 on jerkbait because they were schooling there and I was catching fish there. So I never leave fish to go catch other fish. If I would have chose that spot, I guarantee I probably could have caught more fish there too. Okay, let's jump to this last one and then we'll be about out of here for today. Baits, this is going to answer a lot of you guys' questions that you had about water clarity and bottom and all this stuff. Baits to use for pre-spawn baits. Round of applause. I'm going to give you guys something to go buy and spend money on. I know that's what we all love to do is buy fishing tackle. Get them credit cards warmed up. Let them go get warmed up. Y'all know that I always talk about simple baits, simple, like everything that's on this page is some stuff that you already got in your tackle box. You just need to know how to use it the right way. A lot of times when you ask questions, what's something I always say back? Context, context, context. Context is everything. Context can mean what species of fish we're talking about. Context is, are we talking about spots? Are we talking about smallmouth? Are we talking about large? Context is the water clarity. Context is what type of body of water. Is it like a Lake Hartwell clear? Is it like Lake Guntersville, which is a TVA lake with ledges and grass flats? Is it a northeastern lake, the New England natural lakes? Is it Florida lake? It's everything you ask. There has to be more questions to be answered first before they can be even remotely answered truthfully. Or even truthfully is not a good word because we're all just sharing experiences and not necessarily a truth most of the time. Now, if I just showed you me catching a fish on a point, that's just the absolute truth. But if I say points, all the fish are on points, that's just an experience. If I say points are a good place for you to fish during the pre-spawn of the year, that's an experience. But truths are, I caught them on this today. You need to be able to distinguish between the two. The way that I like to think about baits that I'm going to use for fishing during the pre-spawn is in the context of clear water. I would throw a third category in there, but I feel like it would make the waters too muddy. I like to just 2 categories. We're going to think about clear water. We're going to think about stained water. How many categories? 2. 2 categories. Clear water, stained water. Okay, let's jump into clear water first. I'm going to be fishing these points right now, and my lake looks like Lake Hartwell. If my lake looks like, what's another clear water fishery you guys may know about? A Lake Lanier. Potomac, I'm going to put in the stained water category. If it looks like Lake Champlain, this is a clear water. If it looks like Sam Rayburn, clear water fishery, that's Texas. If it looks like Potholes Reservoir in Washington State, clear water fishery. If it's a California Delta, it's probably going to be a stained water fishery. And listen, then there's micro environments within each body of water. I can find stained water at Lake Hartwell. I can find stained water at Gunnersville. I can find clear or stained water at Lake Chickamauga. So even within your body of water, you're going to find all these different little micro environments that you can apply these different techniques. This is the layers that I was talking about. When I say there's only stain, I say there's only clear, but then you learn there's only two things that you really got to worry about, but then there's layers within the layers. So Lake Hartwell, what's the one thing everybody says about Lake Hartwell, since that's what I keep mentioning in this conversation? Clear water, clear, deep water, clear, deep water. It'll make you think that you can't go to Lake Hartwell and throw a crankbait, throw a buzzbait, throw a spinnerbait in 2-foot deep water. The guy that finished second fished stained water throwing a buzzbait and the jig on laydowns this past week. It has other options for you. The bulk of the lake, if it's 56,000 acres of Lake Hartwell, it probably has 10 to 15,000 acres of stained water that you can fish. But the bulk of the fishery is clear, deep water. So everything is about context. And remember that all your lakes have some degree of micro environments in them. It has some degree of this water is clearer than that water. This water is more stained than the other water. And you need to identify those areas so you know what strategies that you can execute on when you're out there fishing. Clear water fishing is simple. A jerkbait, a Carolina rig, a drop shot, crankbaits, jigs, swim baits. Anybody have any questions about those? Is there anything I need to explain? Any of those baits or rigs you've never heard of before or you've never seen, don't know what they look like? Don't be ashamed. Just put it in the comments. This is the right place where you can say that. And nobody's going to laugh or think any less of you if you do. So definitely let me know if I need to show you. I'm right here in my fishing shop and I can show you lickety split. Another terrible analogy, but I can show you the baits ASAP. That's what I should have said. Okay. Jerkbait, Carolina rig, drop shot, crankbait, jigs, swim baits. If I got clear water, I'm fishing points during the pre-spawn. That's what I'm using. If I've got stained water, and I'm fishing points, and I know the fish is in the pre-spawn, we have identified what the pre-spawn is. Water stabilization, temperature stabilization, longer periods, longer days, stained water. I'll still use the Carolina rig. Bulk the bait up to maybe a 6-inch lizard, a gremlin, which is what I designed it for. I'll still use a drop shot. Crankbaits, that'd be more like a square bill, medium diving, DT6, MR6. Jigs, the chatterbait, the lipless crankbait would be my favorites to throw right now during the pre-spawn. In the context of pre-spawn and stained water. Do we have any questions about this? I'm seeing them pop up in the chat. Okay, let's see. What color baits for both types of water? Okay. What color baits for both types of water? When I'm fishing clear water, I think of my colors in two categories. Do you remember me just saying the more I get into fishing, the more simple I make everything? Because I realize what matters and you push the rest away. When it comes to colors, I want you to start thinking in two extremities. I go extremely natural. I'm going to go in clear water. I'm going to go extremely natural. That means I'm going to throw something that looks just like a shad. I'm going to throw something that looks just like a Bren. I'm going to throw something that looks green, brown, pearls, very natural colors. Do you know what that looks like? Hang out right there. Hang out there right 1 second. Okay, so that's the jerk bait that I used this past weekend right there. See, it's clear. A little bit of maybe gold or something on the back, grayish and gold on the back. Okay, see that? I guess you can see it pretty good. Hopefully that's focusing decent.
It is.
All right, so that's an example of natural colors that I would use. Okay, and then I go the polar opposite. When you're in clear water, naturals, and then you want fluorescence and bright colors. You see that? Pinks. Fluorescent colors are going to be your chartreuses, pinks, purples, violets. And that's in hard baits or soft plastics. So you may be looking for me to give you, well, in clear water, throw green pumpkin and Aaron's Morning Magic. I don't care what the color is. I don't care what it's called. I want you to think in two extremities. Thinking natural colors. Thinking fluorescence. Pinks, neons, those neon colors, chartreuses. It's one or the other. It's always one or the other. Okay, when you're fishing stained water, the colors are not going to matter as much. Why? Why is that in stained water? When we've went into this before, some of the people in the app, you better give me the answer because I spent a bunch of time coming up with that sermon. In stained water, we're not going to worry about colors as much because there's lack of light. And I always give this illustration. If I were to turn off my lights in my shop right now, and it was 3 Brians in here, and I told you to find the Brian with the plaid hoodie on. There was one with the plaid hoodie on, there's one with the white t-shirt, and there's one with the blue jacket on. I told you to find the one with the plaid hoodie. How would you find me if there's no light? You wouldn't be able to find me. But you could find me if there was one of the Brians was whistling and one of them was farting, and then the other one was breathing really hard. And I told you to find the one that's breathing really hard. You could find me because you could hear me. Does that make sense? So when you get in stained water, the vibration, the noise factor now trumps the color, because the bass is you're going to get the attention of the bass through vibration, water movement, more so than you are the color. When we're in clear water, we're getting the bass's attention by sight. When we're in stained water, we're getting it by water displacement and sound and vibration. And we prioritize color or vibration by the water clarity. Most of the time. That's just the guideline that we use to get us to where we're trying to go. It's not the gospel truth, but it's just the guideline. We got to have a guide. We got to start somewhere, but that's where we're going to start. So when I go to the stained colors, it's black, blue, chartreuse, red. It don't really matter. It now changes. That's why my lure categories are different in stained water than it is in clear water. I use a red rattle trap. I use a blacks. In my crankbase, I use reds, whites, and chartreuses. Combined with whatever color back that you like, blue, whatever it is for you. So, if I was fishing stain water, this is old red lipless. And it's really not about the fact that lipless is red. It's about the fact that this lipless has noise. Okay, the chatterbaits is going to be like my chatterbait box. I have black, blue. I have some type of green pumpkin, some type of brand stuff. Then I've got like white and chartreuse. I have those 3 colors. I don't care about the rest of them. Because I know when I'm throwing the chatterbait in stain water, I don't get the bite on the chatterbait because it has 3 strands of orange and 54 strands of green. I got the bite on the chatterbait because I got his attention by the movement and the water displacement that the chatterbait creates by either the trailer or the blade. So we prioritize our colors by the water clarity. We prioritize our colors by going to the extreme natural and clear water or fluorescent or neon colors. But when we get to stain water, we prioritize less. Didn't say we don't prioritize. We prioritize less on colors and more about action, vibration, water displacement. That's congruent across all seasons. Not only the pre-spawn, it's through everything that we do. David says dark colors in stain. You can. There's no light, so it don't matter if it's dark or light anyway. If I cut out the lights in this room, are you gonna know whether I have on white, dark color? It ain't gonna matter. You're not gonna. There's no light. When you have lack of clarity, that means there's light. There's less light. More sediment in the water column filters the light, makes it darker. If you don't believe it, this is what everybody needs to do. Take your GoPro, stick it down in the water, and see how far you can actually see any light at all before it's pitch black dark. For most of us, it's going to be pitch black dark pretty fast. And so you quickly realize you've been wasting energy on colors way more than you should. You've been trying to find them green pumpkin blue worms with green pumpkin with the blue flakes and a little bit of silver. You've been running all over town where you could have took them same worms that you got in your tackle box without the blue flake and caught the same fish that you caught. But no, you spent 50 miles sending your wife to academy in a different county to go buy them worms with them blue flakes when the blue flakes didn't even matter anyway because it wasn't but a foot visibility in the water. They ain't see them blue flakes. They didn't even see the blue flakes. And now you out of $80 in gas and you done pissed your wife off because she wanted to come home Friday night and watch Netflix. But you got to go into academy in Sussex County.
And well, that's pretty awesome that she went and did that for you.
It's pretty awesome, but it's probably the last time she ever going to do that. She done pissed her off. This stuff doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. It never matters until it matters. And it almost never matters. You know what I hate the worst thing? If you want to guarantee that I don't catch a fish on a bait in a tournament, it's for me to do a rush order from Tackle Warehouse or somewhere to get a bait to me. Guarantee it ain't going to work for that tournament. You go try something in practice and you're like, oh, I got 4 more of these Junebug red worms. The other one's a Junebug. I really want Junebug red. If I rush them suckers to my house, you can guarantee I ain't going to catch no fish on that week. They'll start doing something else. They'll bite top orders in December before they bite that Junebug red. But it has never worked out for me because it never matters that much. It almost never matters that much. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter. It almost never matters that much at the time. But I'm not saying color doesn't matter. Color does matter. It does matter. But it's all about context. It's all about the freaking context. Okay, was that the end of my slideshow? I think, right, Michael? Or no? It should have been.
Yeah, it was.
Okay. Last thoughts. We're getting to 9:30. I'm losing my kids that didn't know that Chase Rabbit. How does lateral line factor in this conversation? None. I would say none. I don't think that's lateral line. I'm thinking you're talking about the stain water deal. We know what the lateral line does. but I don't think this is nothing we need to throw in the mix of here talking about pre-spawn fishing on points. It's more of, I would say, a fish biology question. We just know the baits that we need to be looking for staying water, and then the baits and colors that we need to be looking for clear water. Bring back the pumpkin seed worms. Go get them. Buy them. They'll bite them. Cotton candy. Buy them. Go get them. Let me see. Did you see anything?
You've been keeping up with them.
I think we're good, huh? Yeah, I think we're good. Hey, y'all. Thank y'all. I want to end on this note. I do want to say thank y'all for all the support and following me during the tournament this past weekend. That was the tournament that I was the most worried about any on the schedule this year was Lake Hartwell, because I know how complicated it can be, that place. It has so many different options, so many different things to do there at Lake Hartwell. So I was really worried about how it's going to play from. You know, you're going to catch fish when you go to Lake Hartwell. You never know if you're going to be able to catch the right size fish. So I was really worried about that, and having Nathan came to weigh in for me. Had a couple other friends there, and my parents got to come to weigh in. Of course, just being local, I had a lot of one of my buddies that used to fish team tournaments there with me. So it was a good week. That part of it was better than the fishing in and of itself. You don't feel like you're out there by yourself. So I really appreciate y'all being a part of the group. Hey, make sure you RSVP for the retreat here next weekend. I'm excited. My garage is full of boxes. We're going to have a lot of tackle there. To give you a heads up, this year, the way I'm doing the tackle different than I have in years past. I got something to show y'all too. I'm doing the tackle different than I have in years past. We're going to have all kits, and we've designed the kits specifically for the lessons that I'm going to be teaching there at the seminar. So if we're talking about chatterbaits, we'll make a kit for the chatterbait. If we're talking about shaky heads, I'll bring you a kit. If I'm talking about fishing docks, I'll make you a kit just for fishing docks. So you have everything you need while you're there, fishing points, etc. Bring a friend, tell a neighbor, bring somebody with you. Would love to have the girl be, the most successful. I think everybody's going to get some value out of this. I want this to be the best experience you have ever had in a fishing seminar ever in your life. I want it to feel like, gosh dang it, we should have 5 of these every year after this retreat. So I'm looking forward to it. That's all I have for y'all. I'll be in touch with you. Oh, I'm going to try to catch up on the Ask B-Lat stuff. I'm not even going to lie to y'all. I slept to 11 o'clock today. Your boy was beat down in the dirt. I was tired. So I will catch up on Ask B-Lat, film a podcast, and get all that stuff going. Thank y'all. Y'all have a good rest of your day, night, week. Make sure you jump in on the community roundtable conversation we're going to have Wednesday. And I think I have another live on Friday. Okay? Y'all have a good rest of your night.